This podcast is sponsored by AXA Farm Insurance. AXA offers tailored cover to fit your unique needs, whether it's public liability or protection for your family home, outbuildings or farm vehicles. Based in Athlone, the AXA Farm team of agri-specialists and regional managers work together to ensure you receive the seamless support you need. Switching to AXA is easy thanks to an innovative online service that enables you to quickly and easily find the best cover for your needs. For more information, head to axa.ie. AXA Insurance DAC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to AgriFocus, the podcast brought to you by Agriland and AXA Insurance. I'm Stella Meehan and I'm joined today by MEP for the Midlands Northwest, Ciaran Mullooly, who joins us live from Strasbourg during a week of great importance for Irish farmers as the Mercosur trade deal becomes more prominent in an EU context. So just for some background, the EU Mercosur trade deal would allow 99,000 tonnes of carcass weight of beef from the Mercosur countries, that's mainly from Brazil, to enter the EU at a much reduced tariff rate of 7.5%. The quantity of beef under this quota will be phased in over a 5-year period. In return, Mercosur countries such as Brazil and Uruguay would remove import duties on 91% of EU goods. The deal proposed by the European Commission has faced significant criticism, particularly from the farming community in Ireland and other countries such as France. During the process of negotiating the deal, the European Commission added in so-called safeguards to protect the interests of EU farmers and other suppliers in the event that the level of imports from Mercosur countries began to negatively affect market competition for the EU. So among the safeguard detail is the following. A price undercut of 10% in sensitive products, including beef, coupled with either a 10% increase in preferential import volumes or a 10% drop in import prices, will be treated as a rule as sufficient grounds to launch an investigation and potentially take measures to offset the impact. This was then revised to a threshold of 5% instead of 10% after a compromise. Now, sensitive product investigations would now aim to conclude within 2 months, with provisional safeguards introduced within 14 days of initiation. So in the past week, the European Parliament's International Trade Committee introduced those compromise amendments to the Mercosur Safeguard Regulation. So under the new text then, the Commission must issue monitoring reports every 3 months rather than every 6 months, which was originally proposed, with the intention of providing early warning systems for sensitive agricultural products. So these reports must also include product-specific data, enhanced border check findings, and, where relevant, member state level impacts. So now that we understand the lay of the land in official terms regarding Mercosur, Ciaran Mullooly, tell us what it is that is the lay of the land with the powers that be that are in favour or against the Mercosur deal, and what's the feeling out there in Brussels and Strasbourg at the moment?
Well, hello Stella, and hi to your AgriFocus podcast listeners. Like it has been all along, the Mercosur picture changes every week. Believe me, some time back somebody said to me, it's all over bar the shouting, Ciaran Mullooly, you're wasting your time. I think this week more than any week I can disagree with that, because things are changing on a day-to-day basis. As you said, we've gone through this torturous process of looking at safeguards. I have to say at the outset, Stella, I'm not happy at all with what the safeguard procedure is supposed to do. It's largely talking about measures that would cut in after a period of time or come into play after a period of time. To me, there's only one issue at stake here. Prevention is better than cure. So let's try and prevent the problem from coming up in the first place before we start looking at this issue of having cures. The market will collapse by a certain amount, or that there'll be an issue we should react to, or something. Let's try and deal with it I have chosen this from the very outset. And I think the countries in member states in Europe and the MEPs I know are listening to me. So I've argued that instead of this focus on safeguards, we should look again at the actual agreement. Look, closer at the issue of traceability, looked closer at the issue of the use of antibiotics, looked closer at the use of the practices of the Mercosur countries, particularly Brazil. And I have to say, in the last 7 days, I get a sense that now more than ever, the member states are listening to us, and I know the MEPs are, Stella, because I was in a car on the way from the airport to Strasbourg this week with an Italian MEP. A Green MEP from the Sicily district. And in the space of half an hour, he agreed with me that as it stands at the moment, forget about the safeguards, the agreement is still not satisfactory. It's still not a good deal. I've referred to it as a rotten deal. It is still a rotten deal. It still allows farmers in a different part of the world operate with different rules. You know, I've said this many times that in a previous life, Stella, you will know and your listeners will know, I worked in journalism. I went to courts all over the country for RTE News, and I watched farmers in a period in the 80s and 90s being led out of district courts and circuit courts in handcuffs because they were using illegal animal growth promoters. Now, we were told that time by the government, by the Department of Agriculture, by the Department of Health, this was dangerous for our health, absolutely lethal in terms of our health and the use of antibiotics and antimicrobial, etc. And we stopped it. We outlawed it. We ruled it out. It's illegal in Ireland. It doesn't happen anymore. And here we are still 20, 30 years later asking the Irish people and consumers in Europe to get into bed with a country that operates illegal animal growth promoters. We know that. We have proof from the EU Commission itself, auditors. We know that to be the case.
And the Commission has said, though, that I suppose it would be more on the safeguards are more in terms of the economic impact for farmers and the fact that obviously the competition would be, if they say potentially the competition will be to be affected for EU farmer suppliers, then the safeguards will come in, and that's the momentum behind potentially the trade deal not going ahead at the moment. Well, not that it won't go ahead, but that, as you said, this momentum over the last week is gaining.
Yeah, but are the two issues not linked? Is it not obvious to everybody that the two issues are linked? So, you know, if the economic benefits if the Brazilians get away with this and come in and start flooding the market with high quality beef at a low price, they will have done so because of their production costs back in Brazil. They'll have done so because they'll have got away with using illegal animal growth promoters to get weights up and to illegally influence the cut. So they are connected. You can't disconnect them and say that the issue of use of antibiotics is not a financial. It is a financial issue actually as well, because it effectively leads to an advantage and an unfair advantage and an illegal disadvantage. So I've been big on this from the beginning. Prevention is better than cure, Stella. That's still my view. And I think we must, and I think, to be honest about it, that's the big change this week. The big change I noticed this week is in the Italian background music coming from Rome in particular. I worked on this for a long time. We had a vote back in January and February here in Strasbourg in the plenary. It was a right-wing vote, so it was just testing the water more than anything else. But on that day, we lost. They wanted to stop negotiations on Mercosur, so we lost by about 55 votes. 85 MEPs did not vote at all that day. They were absent or didn't vote. We looked at it very carefully in my office, and we found out that 35 of them were Italian. And we realised that day that the Italians were in some difficulty on this and were experiencing the same issues we were. So we went after them that time, Stella. That was back in February, March. In the intervening period, I've met 25 of them easily. And they were saying one thing to me. They were saying if we had a free vote, we would vote against Mercosur. But they said Mullooly is convinced in voting yes to Mercosur in Rome. She has the car industry on her back. She knows the likes of Fiat and otherwise are putting pressure on her. And that's where the difficulty is. Now, this week, for the first time, we've seen a chink in that armour. We've seen Mullooly come forward. I confirmed myself earlier this week that she came forward and effectively has teamed up, now sided with the French to delay the vote. It's my opinion as we speak there will be no vote at the Council this week with regard to the ministers coming in and voting yes or no to Mercosur. I spoke during the course of the last few days to representatives of both the French government and the Italian government, and they have now teamed up together for that. So it's very significant. For the first time, Mullooly has said, stop. She has said, stop, I want this deferred. I want to look further at the conditions, the text and the safeguards. And to me, that's a huge moment for us in terms of the No to Mercosur campaign.
It is. I mean, these are big countries with big populations, the likes of France and Italy. And I know that the European Commission had always originally said, Ciaran, that the decision would be made on Mercosur by the end of the year. As you said there's no indication that the Council of the EU will make a vote on it this week. Is it likely now, do you think, from what you're hearing on the ground there, is it likely that decision, do you think, will be deferred? Or will it still go through before the end of the year?
Listen, you've got to look at the politics now, Stella, in terms of what could happen. I know for a fact the Italians have said no, we should defer the vote. I know for a fact the French have said we should. I bloody well hope the Irish have told the Commission we should defer the vote. It should be obvious at this stage, but for some reason the Irish government is not making any public comment on this issue. It's crazy.
Yeah, we've no formal announcement from our government that. Yeah,
it's crazy. It's crazy, and I know this is an issue that will be raised this week and next week in the Dáil by my colleague Michael Fitzmaurice of Independent Ireland. They've got to come out and say what they're doing. I presume they're in there saying we need more time. We need to look at the text. We have reservations as well. We haven't heard this, amazingly, from them. But in the circumstances, and this is the way Europe works, if Italy and France pool together on this. We know Poland are against, we know Ireland are against, we know Austria have issues against. We're getting to the right numbers in terms of a blocking vote. Now, if Italy have said to von der Leyen, if you push on this, you will lose, she will defer the vote. And I believe that's what they have said. I believe they've told her, if you push this vote this week, we will vote against and you will lose. And I think in those circumstances, the Commission has no choice but to postpone the EU Council vote.
And in terms of the Parliament there, as they said, this was proposed by the Commission, and they say that ultimately probably the final decision will be with the Council of the EU. But there's also leverage there that the European Parliament has as well. Isn't that true, Ciaran? To slow things down, to tie it up, we'll say.
Absolutely, most certainly. I mean, it's thanks to the Lisbon Treaty, we are co-legislators. That's the official position. So, in other words, the European Commission can do nothing on its own, and the member states can do nothing on their own. They have to come back to the Parliament. So, at the end of the day, those three issues must come together. That's reinforced in law, which means, in effect, that no matter what the Council does, it still has to come back for a vote here in this Parliament. So, 700 MEPs here will eventually have a vote on that. And as you mentioned, there's a couple of other safeguards on our side of the House, which I've been very prominent involved in. Earlier this week, I spoke again to the Office of the President of this Parliament, Roberta Metsola, about the legal review of this agreement. Many of us still believe, Stella, that there are issues with regard to this agreement in some key areas. I, for instance, feel that it should be legally tested in terms of what it has done in splitting the vote, ensuring that the trade issue has stayed in Brussels largely. They didn't have a chance to vote on this in the Dáil. I think that was a mistake. I think it should have happened. I think our TDs and senators should have had a chance to vote on it. They've read the treaties as saying they can hold on to that trade issue. I disagree with them. I think the European Court of Justice should have been asked earlier to deal with this issue. Metsola has sat on the fence to some extent, despite pressure from me and from others here. I think we've had 4 Irish MEPs on this case, and she's stalled it so far, but she can't stall it for much longer. And I believe that process then could go on for over a year. So, can the agreement be ratified in the meantime? I'm not sure about that. I don't think anybody in this House knows that for certain. We may not be as close to the floodgates open as people think they are. But it's an important issue because I remember and you'll remember still as well, the treaty votes when they went on. We had this endless debate about what powers we were losing in the Lisbon Treaty and the Maastricht Treaty and all the other treaties. And we were told repeatedly this was one of the powers we weren't losing, a key economic issue in our state. We wouldn't lose our control over it. Yet I think we've lost it because our Dáil and our Seanad, your local TD and senators should have had a vote on this, the same way as I'll have a vote in the European Parliament. They should have had a vote as well. And that process is still to play for. We will get our day in the court on this. I wish it was much earlier. And we'll have to see what happens. Now, as you said, there's a couple of other factors which may also slow down, but slow them down for good reasons. I don't go with this thing, we're just deferring it and slowing it down for the sake of slowing it down. Some of the safeguards that have been put forward, even though I'm against Mercosur, I will vote for safeguards. Don't get me wrong. I'll try and put in safeguards that are rock solid and prevention rather than cure. That'll be my safeguards. They've gone in already. But the committee in charge of those is the Trade Committee, not Agriculture. That's important. Now, the Trade Committee is heavily dominated by the pro-automotive industry. Not just the Germans, but the Spanish are in there as well, and Italians in some respect. They've been pushing, and they've pushed away some of our good, well-intentioned safeguard amendments. Some of my amendments haven't got through. Some of my colleagues haven't. But again, this week, and we're going to see that in the European Parliament this week, there are other amendments coming forward, and there'll be an effort to include those. If we get through in a vote in the Parliament, if we get through 1-2 of those, then it seems to me they'll have to go to trialogue. And that, in turn, will mean a considerable delay for any start to Mercosur if it did go through.
So just for the farmers, I suppose, in Offaly or Laois or Longford, wherever it may be, that maybe don't understand fully the workings and the mechanisms of the EU institutions. When it goes to trialogue, what does that mean? So the farmers can just get a grasp of what that means, Ciaran.
So in layperson's terms, you have a piece of legislation produced by the European Commission, the Mercosur deal in this case. They want to push this trade deal. That's the Commission. That's the officials of the Commission and the President. That's her prerogative, and she's done it.
And they are not elected representatives, no.
They're not elected representative, and my colleague Michael Smart refers to them as faceless representatives a lot, and he's right in some respects. We only know Mercosur, we don't know many of the other people behind but anyway, when it comes forward, it goes to Parliament and it goes to the Council of Ministers. And in Parliament, if there's a vote, the Parliament will put its shape on the legislation. It'll change it, and always does. We will change Mercosur legislation. Will you see? We will change it in some respects, and let it be safeguards clause or otherwise. But then what happens if it's agreed by the Parliament and voted through by the Parliament in the plenary stage here? It doesn't become law overnight. It doesn't become legislation overnight. It goes back to what they call a trialogue process, and the trialogue is, I suppose, a group involving the Commission and the Member States and the Parliament, which sit down and look at the legislation to make sure it's workable. That's the key to trialogues. What's realistically can go ahead today? What can be taken now? What can be taken for? And in some respects, what countries can be taken out of the agreement? That also could happen, by the way. In the past, there have been derogations given to countries from trade agreements. And that's something Ireland again could seek at Council State. So it's very much still to play for. Trialogue is the last lap of legislation usually, and it means the three groupings coming together to come to a compromise or a practical arrangement. Most of the time, it doesn't happen all the time. We've had a few hairy moments in this Parliament, particularly on issues to do with simplification of farming stuff in the last few months, with late nights and changes and dramatic changes to some agreements. So, as I say, it's the last lap, but it's a very important last lap. It's called trialogue, with the three parties coming together. And believe me, on Mercosur, it won't be easy.
And this week, farmers from across Europe are going to descend on Brussels to protest and to demonstrate. It's a lot about Mercosur, but it's not just Mercosur. It's about the budget, the multi-financial framework as well, and CAP funding going forward. From your point of view there in the inner workings of what happens in Europe, Ciaran, how effective are demonstrations or spectacles like this by large groups like Farming Lobby in terms of reaching the powers that be? And in this case, we're probably looking all the way up to Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President. How effective are they?
I'll be honest with you, Stella, they are really effective. It's my experience in the European Parliament over the last 18 months that this is a parliament still living under the shadow of previous farmer protests and automotive industry protests. The Germans in particular have been scarred by the car industry protests of the last 2 to 3 years. And they absolutely detest the sight of a protest from the car industry. It has taken its toll on their political interests. And similarly, the French have also shown pretty clear evidence that they don't want to see farmers back on the streets again either. French farmers leave their mark when they protest.
That's for sure.
It's not like the tame protest we put together in Ireland. What are you going to say? Fortunately or unfortunately, I won't comment. But at the end of the day, the French come to protest. They leave a mark in every town in France. It's not just in Strasbourg that they will leave a mark. They leave a mark in every town. We've seen in the past with the Yellow Vest Brigade and elsewhere. They protest at every level, and they're very, very strong. It's a huge lobby group. Similarly, the Irish, don't get me wrong, the Irish farmers' protests are important. On this Parliament, I have seen people from all over the place coming in here voting, looking for a no vote to Mercosur. We had the ICOS, the cooperatives were here, the meat industry, MMI were here. Everybody's been here, except, I might say, the Chambers of Ireland. Stella, now here's the one. Am I allowed to rant for a few minutes about the Chambers of Ireland? The Chambers of Ireland is a representative group for Chambers of Commerce who wrote to me this week asking me to vote yes to Mercosur and asking me not to engage in time-wasting manoeuvres on legal moves on the text in the European Parliament. Well, I can tell you, I've written back to them in no uncertain terms, telling them that they're way off the mark on this one if they think they represent chambers in the towns in Ireland. I know, because I spoke in the last couple of days to chambers in Galway, in Athlone, and asked them, do these guys represent you? I said, because at the end of the day, every chamber in Ireland knows that the economy of their town is built on the farming community coming in on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, to invest in, let it be in agricultural products or in mainstream commercial products. And I know I spoke to a hotelier in Galway yesterday who told me that the Chambers of Ireland do not speak for me, he said. You can tell them to withdraw that comment. I couldn't believe they wrote this letter to us this week. And they asked us to desist from legal moves, which were wasting time. At the end of the day, a legal issue is a matter of constitutionally open to me and to any industry to seek clarification on the legality of a deal. I'm amazed the Chambers took that move. And I've written back to them, I can tell you, Stella, and I'll be ignoring them for the most part. And I'll tell you something, they'll also want to listen to their members in rural towns, in particular in Ireland, if they want to keep their ear to the ground, because they're way off the mark on this one.
And Ciaran, I suppose I'll play devil's advocate here for a moment. There's a greater focus. We all have our own interests, and certainly the Irish beef industry is very important and something that's very, very economically, it really makes rural areas sustainable to have our farming industry, thriving here. But at the same time, as we are part of a bigger trading bloc, and there's more of a focus on defence now as we go forward, and also making us a stronger trading bloc when we have winds coming from the west and winds coming from the right that are putting increasing pressure on us as a trading bloc. So just to play a bit of devil's advocate, like the EU would say, deals like this are important to us as an EU market, as an EU trading bloc, to make us stronger in a global context in an era that we are being squeezed from both left and right of the globe at the moment. What would you say to that?
Listen, I hear it all the time, and my response is the same. I am pro-trade. I'm from the Midlands, west, northwest region. I have some of the best pharma companies in Ireland who want to trade, Stella. And when they come into me, and this is real stuff. During the campaign, we spent half a day in Athlone with the pharma companies, Pharma Jazz, the likes of Agriland, or the former Agriland company in Nova Durisk. They've changed their name a few times now. But we spoke. The bottom line was we spoke to these companies. They want to trade, but you know what they said in those briefings to me? They didn't say, Ciaran Mullooly, we want you to trade to get the door open to South America. The door's already open to South America. They trade already into South America as it stands. But they didn't say we want more, we want less tariffs, we want this. They said, you know what we want you to do? We want you to firstly deal with the regulation of our business in Brussels. They said we're being regulated to death by the drugs and trade authorities, regulation authorities in Brussels. And they showed me drugs available, manufactured in Athlone, which are being produced and sold into America at the moment, cleared by the American drug authorities, but not cleared by the European drug authorities because of overregulation. So that's one example of where the pharma industry are not knocking down my door and saying we want to trade into Brazil tomorrow morning, get on. They're not doing it. They want the European community and the Commission in particular to get its act together with trading within Europe as it stands. Now, I understand that there will be opportunities for other companies. Engineering, I know, is another area looking at it. There'll be opportunities. But the reality is we are trading already with South America. And people shouldn't forget that. We have high-quality products going all over the world as it stands. I made an example of this with Kerrygold in the Trade Committee recently. We're competing well, and we're well able to compete with these countries. In the long term, I know people will say tariffs are crucial, tariffs are important, but we must get the beef and white meat and grain issues sorted out first. They are too big a chunk of our Irish economy. They are too central to what we're doing here. I mean, we're talking about thousands of jobs. I mean, I have to try and firstly deal with those concerns. I think there should be a remedy can be found. If I had a choice in the morning, Stella, I'd proceed with the Mercosur agreement and take the beef and white meat out of it. in the short term. Ask them to proceed without it and let us work on a trial basis and how the rest would see. Let's get proper inspection facilities into Brazil, into South America. Let's get our own EU officials on the ground, not the Brazilian officials on the ground, and let's do a trial base now. I'm prepared to trade and I'm prepared to give them a chance as well, but not until they change their rules, because their rules would not be allowed in this country. People have gone to jail for breaking these rules in the past, and I am not going to stand by and allow them introduce them.
Well, Ciaran Mullooly, that's all we have time for on AgriFocus podcast this week. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll keep an eye and be in touch, no doubt, with you over the course of particularly the next 7 days, where momentum seems to be building up quite a bit around the whole Mercosur issue, and indeed the Irish farmers who will be over in Brussels on Thursday for that large-scale protest organised by Copa Cogeca. Thank you very much to our guest today for joining us, MEP Ciaran Mullooly, MEP for the Midlands North West, live from Strasbourg, and thank you for taking the time out of your day. I know you're under pressure there with legislative matters, so thank you very much, Ciaran, for joining us on AgriFocus this week. We are taking a break from AgriFocus for the Christmas period, but we will return with more informative podcasts in January. Please rate and review this podcast to ensure we can continue making great podcasts for you, our audience. And please do share with anyone you think might like to listen. Until the new year, have a happy and safe Christmas from all of us at the AgriFocus team.
This podcast is sponsored by AXA Farm Insurance. AXA offers tailored cover to fit your unique needs, whether it's public liability or protection for your family home, outbuildings or farm vehicles. Based in Athlone, the AXA Farm team of agri-specialists and regional managers work together to ensure you receive the seamless support you need. Switching to AXA is easy thanks to an innovative online service that enables you to quickly and easily find the best cover for your needs. For more information, head to axa.ie. AXA Insurance Stack is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.